spreading across the country. As kids, we enormous development. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We request you to kindly settle down because we are ready to start our next session. On behalf of CII, I welcome you to the plenary session titled Future of Globalization Challenges for Indian Industry. We're happy to welcome Mr. Amitabh Kant, G20 India Sherpa. I request Mr. Jamshed Godrej to kindly preside over the session and take it forward.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Mr. Amitabh Kant. As you well know, he's most recently been the Sherpa for the G20 process for India, and of course, continues in that role uh, and has had enormous experience in his career, not only with tourism that he's well versed with, but also with industry and innovation, etc. So we have a very short session with Amitabh this afternoon, just 30 minutes. And I'm going to actually have a question and answer session with him and hope that we are able to address the issue that we have before us. As you know, the theme for the CII Annual Business Summit is co-creating the future responsibly. And I think that's a theme that Amitabh has been very much associated with. And my first question to him is, how does he see the globalization that is taking place uh, and the deglobalization is also taking place at the same time? How do you see the context of India in this current scenario?
Thanks, Jamshed. Um, I think there are several uh, seismic shifts taking place, and it's important to comprehend them. I think first and foremost is that the big power rivalry is back center stage. So, from World War II till now, uh, you didn't have a conflict situation of this nature, but the big power rivalry, if you look at the heart of Europe, you have a Russia Ukraine war going on for almost 3 years. You have China talking about a one China policy, even by force. So you'll have a conflict situation in Asia. And you have the Middle East crisis, uh, which has the potential to become almost a very big regional war, and also has huge humanitarian dimensions. So that's the crisis. But the second big crisis is that there's a globalization as we've known it in terms of global value chains, in terms of global trade. All that has broken down completely. And, just 2 days back or 3 days back, President Biden has imposed very heavy duties, 25% on solars, 25% on steel and aluminum, 50% on solar, and 100% on electric vehicles against any imports from China. And this is largely to do with the fact that China is today controls about 70% of the solar panels. It controls about 60% of the EVs, global EVs, and the almost 65% of the battery manufacturing in the world. So what you're going to see is a WTO, which will be non-functional. Global value chains will remain disrupted, and you will see a huge uh, uh, fight for advancement in terms of innovation and technology between both USA and China. And in the midst of this, if you look at the global GDP, while America's GDP remains at about 25, 26%, the GDP of Europe in the last 3 decades has come down from almost 30% to 15%. And that's why President Macron, in his recent visit to Sorbonne, said that Europe is almost going to die unless it doesn't reinvent itself. So these are the challenges. And the third big challenge to my mind is the emergence of new forces of innovation and technology, of artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data. All this is going to drive productivity. It's going to improve human lives. But the basic assumptions on which and the ethics on which all these progress is made, it will require a lot of international effort to bring in some pro innovation regulation. And so, to my mind, these are the three big things: big power rivalries back center stage. Economic globalization is, in terms of global trade, is going to face huge challenges. And there'll be a huge surge in productivity and advancement in the quality of life of citizens because of new technologies.
So, Mitab, you've painted the picture of globalization as we see it today. In this context, where will India fit in, and what opportunities and challenges will India have to thrive in such a situation?
Okay. It's important to understand this because, as I said, USA is, we must look at global GDP. Global GDP, 25% is United States. China used to be, 4%, 4.5%. Uh, Between 2008 and 2020, China ramped it up and took it to about close to 19% of global GDP. That's the kind of growth which China demonstrated, from 4% to 19% between 2008 to 2020. But China's growth has slowed down. In fact, many commentators were at that time saying that China will overtake United States by 2030, but China's growth has slowed down. Growth has slowed down because of several factors. One is demographics. Second is unpredictability and inconsistency. And now, because India has carried out huge amount of structural reforms. It's moved from the fragile five to the top five. It's grown at about 8.4% in the last 3 quarters. It's the fifth largest economy in the world. It will, by 2027, overtake Germany and Japan to become the third largest economy. So many analysts are saying that actually over about 30% of the global GDP growth will come from India between 2035 and 2040. So this is a rare opportunity for India. This is an opportunity if India is able to really carry out major structural reforms. It's able to create jobs. It's able to drive growth. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity for India. It can be India's decade. It can be India's century. It can be a unique opportunity for India to accelerate the pace. And post elections, really, India should look at this opportunity of creating about 12 to 13 Indian states who are champions of growth. We should have large Indian companies, 10,000 large companies, not just focus on a few companies, but over 10,000 large companies. And we should really become a major manufacturing and export nation.
So, yesterday, the finance minister was here, and she again reiterated the importance of manufacturing. You and I have talked about the future of manufacturing many times in the past. We know that there are constraints, and we've always wanted our manufacturing as a percentage of GDP to be much higher. It hasn't happened, and there are constraints. How do you see what we need to do about removing the constraints that will achieve the type of vision that you just mentioned about India being, 30% of global GDP in the next 20 years?
So, Jamshed, first and foremost, I think the Indian companies and the CII companies in particular must start thinking globally. I mean, they must start thinking big in terms of size and scale. Uh, to my mind, unless you don't look at the global markets, our objective should be not to look at the Indian domestic market, but to penetrate global markets. And if you penetrate, and the price you get in the export market is 5x of what you get in the domestic market. So our objective should be to penetrate global markets. And that's the size and scale is very, very important. And I find this starting to happen now. I mean, look at Tata's getting into semiconductor, getting into mobile manufacturing, getting into plane manufacturing, or looking at what Adanis are doing in terms of solar manufacturing. I mean, the plants in Gujarat is solar plant is equivalent to the size of 5 Paris. That's yeah, or look at what we are doing in terms of airlines. So we've started thinking big, but that needs to be accelerated to look at global markets. That's number one. Number two, I think there's a huge focus needs to be laid on research and research in a very, very big way. Our technology sector needs to be re-innovated to be able to work in partnership with the private sector. That's important. And thirdly, quality. I mean, the recent incidents in terms of pharmaceuticals or in terms of medicines and spices demonstrates that Indian businesses need to lay a lot of more emphasis on quality and focus very much on quality. That's on the part of. So my view is that these are critical on the businesses part, and on the part of the government needs to make the states. Now the government of India has done several things, but now in the next 5 years you need the states. You need about 12, 13 champion states who'll scrap all rules, regulation, procedures, paperwork which have been built over the years, make India extremely easy and simple, and do away with all these outdated labor laws which have been made. They were made for a socialist era, so you need that to be done. So those are, to my mind, very critical things from the government side, that the states must create an environment where private sector must flourish, and without that private sector growing rapidly, India will find it difficult to grow at 9 to 10% for the next 3 decades.
But you very rightly talked about the type of quality challenges that we could face in a globalized world. I think at the same time, Indian industry has, of course, changed a lot from the 1990s and liberalization. And we still have a long way to go. Would you say that environment, sustainability, quality, research, and a general improvement in infrastructure that allows industry to actually flourish and do what they need to do, as opposed to the government and the states, etc., providing the right environment? What is the big thing that industry? You mentioned some of them.
So, two important things you talked about. One is infrastructure, and the other is energy transition and climate. Let me dwell on both. Firstly, I think the government has done a lot in terms of infrastructure, because it took its capex spend as a component of GDP from 1% to close to about 4% in the last 3 to 4 years. So what you're seeing in India is phenomenal amount of, I mean, 40 million houses being made, 120 million toilets being made. You've seen 253 million people getting piped water connection. You're seeing 80,000 kilometers of expressways, roads, highways all being made. I mean, the quality of our roads and airports are better than Europe now. Let me tell you this. And I'm saying this with full conviction. So the infrastructure quality has improved radically because of the government of India's thrust on infrastructure. But the key right now is, and the second big thing India has done is to make a digital leapfrogging. And, all of us have digital identity. We do 46% of the real time fast payments in the world. We've used the mobile as a virtual bank, all that we've done digitally. But the next big thing is our ability to do green transition. And my belief is that India must be the first country in the world. Though we've not polluted the world, it's the developed world which has polluted the world. We only account for 1.3% of the greenhouse gas emissions. But we must be the first country in the world to industrialize through a process of decarbonization. And that'll add value to both Indian industry and to the country. And the way is that, much like we've done in solar energy, we've done 187 gigawatt of renewable energy. We were able to bring down the price of LED very substantially by pooled by procurement. India needs to, even if we were to do 100% of all our electricity as solar and renewable, that's only 20% of the energy. The balance 80% of the energy is steel, cement, it's fertilizer, it's refinery, it's long distance transport. So we need to decarbonize the manufacturing processes and all this. That can only be done through green hydrogen. So India, and I'm glad that Indian companies like Reliance, Adani, Greenco, Wellspun, Renew, all of them, Acme, all of them are making a quantum jump in green hydrogen. And India must become the biggest. We are climatically blessed. We should use the power of renewable to crack water, produce green hydrogen, and become the biggest producer of green hydrogen in the world, and become the cheapest producer of green hydrogen, and become the biggest exporter of green hydrogen, and become the biggest manufacturer of electrolyzer in the world. So we today import 180 billion worth of fossil fuel. And instead of importing, as the Prime Minister has rightly said, by 2047, we should be the biggest exporter of clean energy in the world. And that is the biggest challenge for India and its industries.
I think you have put it very well as to what the challenges are. One of the biggest impediments to starting businesses has been the time delay that it takes, whether for an Indian business or a foreign business. We've talked for years about, having a genuine single window to get all types of permissions in place. Do you see that in our federal structure, that is ever possible?
So, Jamshed, since I've personally worked on this as Secretary DIPP earlier, we did away with a lot of rules, regulation, procedures, everything. And to my mind, the central government has made things very easy and simple. It's now for the states, and actually, my belief is that the CII in the next 5 years, leading businesses like yours and CII in particular, needs to work with the states and unleash that same process of simplicity, that same process of ease of doing business, the same process of making things very easy and simple for the businesses at the state level. That's why I keep saying that the next 5 years, you need about 12 to 13 champion states growing at about 10 to 11% per annum. If states grow, India grows. If states grow, then India becomes a $47 trillion economy, becomes a $35 trillion economy by 2047. If states don't grow, it will be very difficult for India to grow. And, it's important is that it's not the southern or the western part of India, but the eastern part of India, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Bihar, Rajasthan, all these states must grow at high rates. They're all mineral rich states. If they make themselves easy and simple, if they start growing, I mean, India will cross 30 trillions to be a $35 trillion economy. So the next big 5 years should really be championing states to be really easy and simple and driving India's growth story.
Why do you think it's not happened?
It's not happening because one, CII spends too much time in Delhi. Yeah. You keep doing your annual conferences with the same set of people in Delhi all the time. You should move out to the states. Secondly, you must name and shame the states. You must name and shame the state politicians. You must say that this state, I've never heard CII saying that this state is a non-performer. Please go out and say that this state is non-delivering in terms of clearances. Clearly, openly say that this state is non-performing in terms of approvals. Clearly say that this state is not giving labor clearances, etc. All these practices which are impacting businesses must come out openly. We must learn the art of naming and shaming both civil servants and politicians at the state level. And that's when you'll see change happening.
I couldn't agree with you more, except for the fact that CI has to work with everyone around the country. So naming and shaming is not easy. But
No,
let me put it this
see,
way.
CII cannot be a status quo agent anymore. CII must become an agent of change. An agent of change means that you must drive with vigor and energy
But
the state government.
do you recall that some years ago, government, and you were part of it at that time, had set up some sort of a commission, an independent commission to talk on these issues with the states. And that went quite well ahead, and it helped to get a lot of the deregulation from the central government. I think some sort of an independent organization, if it could do this, on a regular basis, but you must give that independent organization 10-year timeline, to
No.
complete this.
10 years too long. In this country, you can't afford 10 years.
To work on it.
Whatever needs to be done in the next 3 months.
Okay.
And crack it and whip it. Yeah. Where is the 10 years? In 10 years' time, both of us would have all gone away. In India needs to make we need 3 months to crack the whip and get states moving now.
But can we ask, you and the government to work together with CII on this, to set up a commission to do it, and do it in 3 months. Chalo, let's take a challenge.
I'll be very happy to work with CII. I'll be delighted to work with it. Whatever you ask me to do, I'll do. I'll take the government's approval, but I will be very happy to work. This is a national cause. This is a cause for India's growth story. This is a cause for the Amrit Kal of 2047, saying that India must become a $35 trillion economy. So all of us need to work for this cause.
Yeah, because I think that, as you rightly said, the opportunity is there. And if we don't take the moment that we have for doing it, we would then not be able to achieve that.
So this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for India. If you don't do it now, you will never be able to do it. Yeah. And next 5 years are critical for India.
So how do you see something like this being done for the states, on competitiveness, on understanding labor markets, on understanding skill development? It has to be done holistically. It can't be in one area alone. Because, if you want development, you must have all round development. And at the same time, I think the rest of India needs to be developed, not just the urban centers. So we have to move out, because already our urban centers are, have their own challenges and are overcrowded.
So you're very right, Jamshed, and I totally agree with you that India needs to fire on all cylinders. India can't grow on the back of services sector. India needs to become a manufacturing nation because it needs to create vast number of jobs. India needs to urbanize in a sustainable manner. And India also needs to enhance its agriculture productivity. And therefore, it needs to focus on floriculture, horticulture, dairy, many other areas so all 4 sectors need to be pushed forward in partnership with the states. One of the key areas is that India has been doing unplanned urbanization, unsustainable urbanization. So if you go from Delhi to Rajasthan, you will see unplanned, unsustainable urbanization. Whereas urbanization can be a very big driver of planned, sustainable urbanization on the back of public transportation, where people can cycle, people can walk, people can take metros to work. Planned, sustainable, compact, dense urbanization can be India's biggest driver of growth in the coming years. And I'm a great believer that sustainable urbanization will actually be a very, very big driver of growth for India in the coming years. So if India, all countries which have grown actually have grown on the back of manufacturing-led urbanization, much like what we've done in Shendra, Bidkin, in close to Aurangabad, and much like what we are doing in Dholera, that is planned walk to work with workers and managers all staying in the same area, and manufacturing and good quality of life, good transportation, all that is happening. That is the kind of urbanization we need to do for the future. We need to make cities for people, not for cars in the future. That will drive India's growth story.
I think this is actually a big opportunity for us to do the reforms, as you mentioned, especially at the state level. And if that happens, then we can certainly look forward to a much higher GDP growth for the country.
So, that's a very important point, because, the political will for urbanization, because you talk to politicians, they will say that we need to focus only on agriculture. But in India today, 45% of your labor force is employed in agriculture. It used to be 42 because of COVID, it's now 45. So 45% of your labor force is too high. You need to take labor force away from agriculture into manufacturing. And that manufacturing must be planned in a manner that it leads to new cities being created in India. That is important for India's growth story.
Yeah. You did mention in the beginning about how China grew,
Yeah.
at
No, even UP,
multiple.
forget China. I'm giving you India's example. Look at Gautam Budh Nagar, which is Noida and Greater Noida. Gautam Budh Nagar, Noida and Greater Noida, their GDP is 12 times higher than the next city of UP, which is Kanpur.
Okay,
That's what
that's
urbanization
that's
is.
a revelation. Yeah. So it obviously can be done, right? But again, I come back to one of my favorite points is that we have to remove some of the constraints that are holding us back. Aside from the mindset, which is, how do you be big and global? Aside from that, we do need nitty gritty work to be done on the ground. And without that, we're not going to succeed.
No, you're absolutely right. So when India jumped up 79 positions in the World Bank of ease of doing business, it was, I mean, I was secretary DIPP that time, and it took me 3 years of hard work on the nitty gritty. So, first year when we started doing it, we went to EPFO and ESIC to remove all the paperwork. So, what they did was they digitized it, but they retained the paperwork. And India's position, instead of going up, improving, actually worsened, because the World Bank said that you are now doing double work. You are making people do digital work, and you are still making them do paperwork. So we had to later literally chase EPFO and ESIC to remove all the paperwork. That's how India. It was a lot of hard work. It was a tremendous amount of work, and that is what needs to be a lot of nitty gritty, a lot of hard work, a lot of looking at lines which have been written over the years, a lot of paperwork which has been built over the years. Because we grew in a socialistic mode, and we've built so many labor laws. You don't paint bathrooms of toilets and factories, you go to jail. Can you believe that? That is, we've put in so many criminal laws into our labor laws. We need to scrap all that. And that is the hard work which needs to be done.
I'm glad you've highlighted that, Amita. There's another area uh, which I think can be very useful for India's development, which is settling not labor, sorry, legal disputes in business. Whether they are contracts, whether it's to do with enforcement of various contracts, etc. Uh, I know that we can't find an answer to the slowness of the court system, in a moment. But how are we going to address this? The legal system being so slow in the country.
So, couple of things. One is that lot of infusion of technology. So, if you are able to push that technology, which is very critical, not at the Supreme Court level, which the Chief Justice has done, but in lower courts, because the common citizen gets in touch with the lower courts. So, you need to actually digitize all these lower courts and the high courts, and where the cutting edge is. That's number one. So technology will make a lot of difference in terms of improvement of providing justice much quicker, much faster. Secondly, I think there's a huge vested interest in, uh, uh, to my mind, adjournment of hearing by lawyers, whereas there should be, there should be the law envisages that there should be no more than three adjournments, but adjournments go on tariq pe tariq pe tariq. So, to my mind, the country as a whole must clearly say that no case will have more than three adjournments at all. And the fourth time must be a clear verdict must be given. Thirdly, we've borrowed this whole process of British jurisprudence, which goes on, uh, you know, uh, firstly taking evidence, then you have lawyers arguing, and then you ask for written statements. All this, it goes on for months together. No, my view on that is that you should just take written arguments and decide. Everything will be put down in writing on the basis of which the judge should decide and say that nobody will be given more than 5 to 6 hours to argue a case and finish it off in one day. We've taken the British jurisprudence systems to extreme levels of ridiculousness where we extend it to such long periods of time. So I think in terms of the processes, a lot of improvement needs to be done. There needs to be a lot of infusion of technologies. And thirdly, I think, as I say, the number of adjournments need to be removed. And fourthly, I think the online dispute resolution, ODR as a system, must grow in India very sharply so that a lot of dispute resolution can take place online.
But who will take the lead in this?
I think it'll have to be done by the judiciary in partnership with the government. The judiciary must take the lead because there should be no this thing that the government is encouraging. But I think the next 5 years again, the government and the judiciary must make this a mission. You know, on ease of doing business, we improved on every single parameter. We jumped up 79 position on every single parameter except on conflict resolution. That is the only place where instead of improving, we went back.
But this is a chronic problem. I mean, it's not, as you rightly say, it's the jurisprudence that we've inherited and whatever we've done over the years. But it's a massive job to change a system like that.
There's nothing nothing massive. I'm telling you, if we can make top class quality roads, if we can transform the Trans Harbor in Bombay, if we can make a sea link in Mumbai, if we can make things easy and simple in so many ways in Government of India, why should it not be done in the judicial process? It should be the next big mission for India. Nothing is impossible.
But I mean, a lot of foreign investors who look at India, look at our legal system, and that really scares them. So, I mean, it is essential that we get on with it.
I totally agree. It's a key to foreign direct investment. It's a key to India growing at 9 to 10%. It's a key to a long-term trajectory of growth of a $35 trillion economy by 2047. Judicial reforms are critical.
So we should get on with CII should actually make a effort to
CII must play a key role in this. Businesses are getting impacted.
Yeah, very much.
CII, much like you worked with me on ease of doing business, you need to work with the judiciary on make ease of judicial processes.
You think they'd be receptive?
I think so. Everybody who's in the interest of the country should be receptive to this.
Good. Let's try, because this is a really critical and
Very
important
critical.
point.
Very critical.
Yeah, because I think you can,
Everybody, I think everybody, including the judiciary, the government, everybody is working in the interest of the government. The outcomes are very clear. Outcomes are that we want to be a $35 trillion economy by 2047. If your outcome is that, that will require you to become judicially very easy and simple.
yeah, good. Let's share ideas on how we can do that actually, because it is, holding back a lot of. I mean, the time that businesses take to resolve issues, can be made things so much more efficient. Great. So I think I'm not sure, but I think our time is up. Uh, so thank you very much. I think you're, as always, very forceful, and I like your urgency, and I hope that you will be a part of how we get there in that urgent way. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jamshed. Always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We have a little token of appreciation that we'd like to present to our esteemed speaker. May I request Mr. Jamshed Godrej to please present the token to Mr. Amitabh Kant. Thank you so much. Thank you, sir. So, a photograph. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Please remain seated. We'll just start the next session in a while.